everyone. Welcome to our very first Facebook Live for the Singapore Garden Festival Hort Show 2021. I'm Charlene Lin, your host. Today, we have an exciting lineup for all you plant lovers out there. We'll start off with a sharing on foliage and flowering plants. Followed by that, we will have a showcase of winning plants from the Singapore Garden Festival plant competition. Now, we'll also be having a Q&A segment right after. So if you have questions, that you would like to ask our very experienced horticulturists, please keep them coming in and they'll be glad to answer them. Now, let's get going. And with me today, I have Sue-Ann from Park. Now, Sue-Ann, you're going to share with us on flowering plants and foliage plants. But before you do that, can you please share with everybody your very fun job, please?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Sue-Ann from the National Orchid Garden in the Singapore Botanic Gardens, where I assist in the cultivation and management of orchids. Now we cultivate orchid hybrids for things such as orchid namings. We also cultivate orchid species for our orchid conservation program.
Now you see, not only do you have a very, very fun job, you also have a very, very important job. So Sue-Ann, please keep working hard. Thank you. Right, you see, on this table now, we have many beautiful potted plants. Can you please introduce a few of them to our viewers, please?
Okay, so today we'll be talking about flowering and non-flowering plants. So over here, we've got a variety of flowering and non-flowering. Now,
they are beautiful.
And they are. Now on my left, we've got Monstera, which is commonly grown at home nowadays.
It's one of the hot favorites, right?
That's right. Yeah, they love the holes on the leaves. Now we've also got Caladium, right, which also have very ornamental leaves. For example, this one, which is quite spotted.
Yes.
Right, okay.
And now, they come in different colors, right?
Different colors, light, dark. They also have pink shades as well.
Right, and all these are just leafy foliages, no flowers.
They do flower. We'll talk more about it later.
Okay. Now, how about a flower plant?
Now, maybe the bright red one, right? So outstanding. This is Anthurium.
Anthurium is beautiful.
Beautiful, right?
And I know that, these plants, if you look at it, right, it may be petite, but it's very intricate.
That's right.
And I know that we call this the hospitality plant. It's because of its open heart. So it's actually very good and for its long-lasting characteristics. So a lot of people have them as gifts or plants at home, right?
Yeah. They are very easy to take care of.
Okay. So you have shared that with us now. Now, a lot of our viewers here today, they want to find out from you the differences between flowering plants, non-flowering plants, or foliage plants. Now, in recent years, the trend of having potted plants at home has become increasingly popular. But I do observe that most of them are, without flowers for these indoor plants, and usually leafy. So do foliage plants actually bear flowers?
Okay. Why don't we start with one of our most common indoor plants that you'll probably have at home?
Yes.
You know what this is?
Money plant.
Money plant.
It has a very good meaning because with money plants, a lot of people have them at home, not just for its good air purifying, effects, but it's actually good because of it brings wealth, right? A lot of people believe so.
Yeah. So this plant, you'll probably never ever see flowers on it, right?
Does it ever flower?
It is a flowering plant, so it is supposed to be able to flower. Now, it belongs to a group known as the aroids, right? And some of the other aroids include Spathiphyllum, like the peace lily. We've also got Anthuriums, right? Okay.
So peace lily is right over here.
Yes, maybe we'll show them the peace lily.
Yes. Okay, so since you talk about peace lily.
And I think just now you also were wondering what the money plant flower may look like, right?
Yes.
Okay, so most aroid flowers take on this form.
Okay.
Now,
and so this is the flower of the peace lily.
That's right. And how many flowers are there?
If I look at it closely, I would think this spike here, you have one big flower there.
One big flower?
Yes.
Well, there's actually more than that. It's a cluster of flowers. Now, this is known as a spadix. And the cluster of flowers is, it surrounds the axis, right, of the spadix.
So you mean the popcorn-looking?
Yes, the popcorn-looking portion, right? And then you also have this spoon-like portion known as the spathe. Now, the spathe functions mainly to attract pollinators. They come in very bright colors, right? Like this is bright white, okay? It also comes, for example, the Anthurium is bright red.
Right.
Okay? And so they need to attract the pollinators for them to be able to reproduce. Okay? It also functions to protect the cluster of flowers in the middle.
Right. So you share the leafy foliage that may flower and may not flower. But what about flowering plants like this? Maybe the bougainvillea.
Bougainvillea. Yes. Now you see this everywhere, right?
Yes, that's why I can confidently name it. Right. You see in multicolors, there are white, it comes in orange, and we see a lot in along our roads and or even in houses, right?
Yep. So this is a very, very common flowering plant. And now, something interesting about the flowers, right? Do you know where the true flowers are on this plant?
Isn't it? It's like, if I were to count, this will be one flower. There should be about 20 flowers
20
here.
pink
You see,
flowers,
it's beautiful,
right?
with its pink petals.
That's right. So most people think that this is the true flower with the pink petals, and then you've got maybe the reproductive parts in the center.
The pollens are at the center.
But it isn't, right? So if you look closely, can you look at the white flowers?
You mean this?
Yes, those are the true flowers.
Oh.
So in this cluster here, we've got 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
Right. Then what about the petals? So these are not the petals.
These are not petals. They're modified leaves. So instead of producing green leaves, they produce bright pink leaves, which act similarly to petals in that it will be able to attract the pollinator.
Right. Actually, if you look at them closely, they
do
look like leaves.
That's right. They do really look like leaves. They've got the venation and everything.
Right.
So now you know a little bit more about the true flowers.
Yes. Yeah. Now, then I want to bring you back to money plant.
Money plant again.
Yes, I'm quite curious. Since you say that they do flower, but we rarely see it. Why is that so?
Right. So, for example, the money plant, in the natural conditions, they grow as creepers or climbers, right? And they grow up trees. Now, they usually are able to grow very, very tall, and they will need to be large enough and mature enough, and given the right conditions, they may flower. Okay. Not only that, but the types of money plants that you have at home, usually they're hybrids, so they may be sterile, and they will never produce flowers.
So if someone really has a money plant at home and they flower, it means a lot of wealth is coming your way. Can I say that?
I can't guarantee that.
Right, just from me, that's from me. No, and I also wonder, so what are some examples of non-flowering plants?
Okay,
can you show me,
some examples of true non-flowering plants. For example, we do have conifers, like pine trees. We also have ferns, right? And I'll show you an example of fern later. There are also mosses, right, which are very, very small plants. So these types of plants never ever flower. Okay, and now over here,
that's a fern, right?
This is a fern. This is blechnum, right? So you may be wondering, and you look at this and you say, it never produces flowers. How is it going to reproduce, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a look at the back of the leaves. Okay. Right. If you look closely at the back of the leaves, you'll see this brown powdery substance. Now, sometimes you'll see this brown powdery substance get stuck on your t-shirts, and then it might get carried away. And then wherever the brown powdery substance drops, which are the spores, right, a new plant will grow. And that's how sperms reproduce.
Right, so it's not like the leaves are drying up, that's why it's turning brown.
That's right. Some people think that it's drying up and dying, but it's not. These are the spores.
Right. Okay, then indeed, it's very fascinating. How about foliage plants then? When we look at these foliage plants, do they flower?
Yeah. Okay, now we have foliage just refers to the leaves of the plant. So the leaves of the plant. So for example, if we take the fern, for example, it could be considered a foliage plant, which is non-flowering, right? We can also take other types of plants. For example, Epicedias. This is a very popular plant which is grown for its foliage, and it's often referred to as a foliage plant as well. But as you can see, it's also flowering very beautifully, right?
Yes, in very good bloom actually.
Yeah, that's right. So many blooms, okay? And this foliage plant, it's very popular because if you touch the leaves, kind of furry, right?
It's furry. It's like, if you touch it, it's like velvety and all. It's very,
velvety.
Very therapeutic. And it's very beautiful. And it's relatively meaty, I would call it.
A bit, yes, a bit succulent.
Yes, right.
A little thick, yeah. And also, I think some people might get a shock. If I don't tell you it's furry and you touch it, you won't be expecting it. Yeah.
True. But it's indeed beautiful to have at home.
Yeah, and it comes in many different colors, purple, green. Some of them shimmer with a sort of a silverish kind of a tinge to it as well. Beautiful.
Right. So you just share with us. So for foliage plants, it may be flowering or non-flowering plants.
That's right.
Now I'm going to ask you another question.
Yeah.
Now, can you share with our viewers out there, if they want to buy potted plants, what are the tips that they should look out for?
Okay, some of the tips. All right, why don't we just take whatever's in front of us, okay? This is a good example. It looks good, it's blooming, it looks rather healthy. You want to look at the overall condition of the plant, okay? Many leaves, okay? You
And lots
also
of
see
flowers.
Lots of flowers, okay? In fact, you see some offshoots. So it's possible that this plant could even be propagated in due time.
Right.
But secondly, apart from overall, you need to look closer, right? Look for the pests, look for the diseases. Now, on this one, can you see anything wrong with it?
It looks fine. Usually when I look for pests in the plants, I will turn the leaf
Turn the leaves,
on
that's
the
right.
underside, but it looks pretty clear and
Looks
good.
pretty clear. How about
Yes.
this one, right? Can you see?
Yes, this flower does look different.
Right.
we-
It's sort of,
It has some white dots on it.
yeah, and those are aphids.
Oh, these are aphids?
Yes,
Wow.
aphids. So aphids are, if you bring home a plant with aphids, right, they may even spread quite easily. Okay, they'll spread to your other plants. So if you do happen to accidentally buy one of these pots, you want to treat it immediately when you bring it home.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
otherwise you'll get aphid infestation.
So we must really look closely before you bring it
yeah,
home.
do check.
Right. Okay. So now we know that is you can buy it, but you have to treat it.
Yeah,
Okay. Still a very
that's right.
beautiful pot.
Yeah.
What about the plant beside you?
The plant beside me.
Yes. If I
Okay.
see it in the nursery, I'll be wondering, should I get it? Because it looks kind of messy to
Looks
me.
kind of
It's like,
messy.
if you look at it, it's growing everywhere.
Well, you know, these are all baby plants. So if you do bring it home, you'll probably have a chance to be able to propagate it.
Also, it's very worth it to buy. You buy one, you
Yes.
get many free.
That's right, you may get even 10 free, right? Like this one. Okay?
Okay.
So if you really find that this, you don't like this, it's easy, you can just trim it off, right? But I think most people like to keep it on.
Ah,
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Now, in this case, can you give us a quick summary of the points that you have just shared?
Okay.
About buying a potted plant.
Buying a potted plant. Okay, so you want to look out for the overall health of the plant. Okay, you want to look at the pests and diseases, right? You also want to look out for soil that is hard and which is compacted, which I could show you an example later. Okay, and usually hard and compacted soil will crack and it's not good for the plant because water and nutrients can't get to the roots. You may also want to look for roots which are growing out of the pot because that means that the plant is growing too large for the pot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then how about some plants that people will buy for during festive season, like the bulbous hyacinth, or maybe like Christmas is coming, poinsettia. So is it possible for us to take good care of it, try to make it flower or fruit, so that year after year we don't have to keep buying?
Right, okay, so most of these plants are sort of short-lived and they're not so easy to recultivate because they're given very specific conditions for them to flower and grow, okay? And most of these are cultivated just in time for the festive season. After their bloom fades, I wouldn't recommend keeping them
Right, I see.
grow, but you could try. Yeah, you could.
So we should enjoy it while it lasts, right?
Definitely.
I'm asking Sue-Ann so many questions. So viewers out there, if you have questions for her, later on we have a Q&A session. So you can simply key in your questions in the comment and she'll be glad to answer them later on.
Definitely.
Now, so I'm going to continue my question. Now, you have shared with us on buying a potted plant. But how about care for the plant? Because as a gardener myself, it's really nice when I see my seeds germinate and then, seedlings growing well, thriving. But when it suddenly show a sign of like, let's say, unhealthiness, or I see pests on it, it can be pretty challenging. So what should we do?
Okay, so the first thing that you need to get right is the basics of cultivating plants. Plants need light, they need water, and they need fertilizer. These are sort of the basics of cultivating plants, all right? Maybe we'll take an example.
Okay.
For example, the bougainvillea. Okay.
A
Now this
common plant, right?
yeah, this is just a cutting right now. But if you grow a potted bougainvillea at home, now this is a very hardy plant. It's very easy to grow, and that's why you see it along our streets, right? So along our streets, that you get a full day of sun from morning till night. The temperatures are really, really hot, and the plant is also very, very drought tolerant. Okay.
So it's very easy to take care.
Easy to take care of, okay? But you still need to take care of it, okay?
Okay.
Now, if you take a pot of bougainvillea and you put it in a dark room, it will probably never flower for you and it will start to wilt. So make sure that if you buy a sun-loving plant, like a bougainvillea, give it the right amount of sunlight.
Would it be like rule of thumb, maybe 4 to 6 hours a day? Would that be sufficient?
For a full sun plant, they would prefer a full day, from morning till evening.
So
Yes.
when we talk about morning sun, if let's say a plant only likes 4 to 6 hours,
Yes.
is morning sun better than the afternoon sun? Is there a difference?
There is a difference because in the morning it tends to be cooler, right? And then in the afternoon, it will be sort of a little bit hotter. So it really depends on how sensitive the plant is. You need to know your plant.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So that's care for a hardy plant.
Yes.
So easier maintenance there.
Easier maintenance,
Right.
yes.
So, but how about maybe a less hardy plant that you can show us?
Okay, let's talk about another plant which is very commonly grown indoors. This is the fiddle leaf fig. Okay. Now, this, you can grow it next to a windowsill where there is, diffuse sunlight. It can take some direct sunlight, but not the same amount as, say a bougainvillea. It's also not as drought tolerant, so you'll need to make sure you water it sufficiently. Okay, now how do you tell? Because if you keep this indoors, usually the tendency might be to overwater, okay? Overwatering is a serious problem.
Yes.
It will cause the plant to die. So you want to make sure you're able to check. So how do you check, right? Charlene, you want to try? You can
Yes.
touch the soil.
I learned that through the touch test. So once you touch it, you can actually feel the amount of moisture that it has.
Yeah.
So I know that we have to do it gently, right? We don't have to press it hard because if we were to do that, we will make the soil very compact.
That's right.
Right. So end up is backfire.
So a gentle touch.
After touching it, and you can see.
Yep. You can actually feel the dampness with your
Yes,
finger.
I can feel it. At the same time, I do pick out some bits of the soil.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So this is sufficient.
So that's an easy
it
way.
has just been watered.
Yeah, it's just been watered, don't water it again, okay? So simple as mention it again, just a gentle touch so that you don't compact the soil. Now you can feel the dampness and also some soil may get stuck to your finger.
Okay, now we learned that. And how about fertilizing it?
Okay, so for fertilizer, you will want to use a small amount. You have to be very careful of chemical burn because some people may use a large tablespoon or a soup spoon.
The more the better. The idea of let's feed it more nutrients, give
Yeah.
it more extra vitamins and help it to, thrive better.
Try better. But instead, you're doing the opposite. Okay, too much actually kills the plant. Okay, so the key is a little bit and often, right? So a small teaspoon, especially for a small pot like this, is more than enough.
So the size of the plant will also help us to determine how much it needs.
Yes, that's right.
Right, okay. Now we learned that from you. Now, if I have another question, if the plant that I'm having is flourishing, and I look at it and I'm thinking, I want to give it to more people. Since it's growing so well, right? Can I do that?
Yeah, definitely, right? Okay, let's start with the plant which you mentioned previously.
Yes.
Okay, the one with lots of babies.
The messy one, but very worth it to buy.
So this is super worth it, okay?
Many babies here.
Okay, why don't we take a closer look at some of the young plants, right? Okay, can you see the roots growing at the young plant?
I can see it on this plant.
Yeah.
Here, right here.
So there are
it's
some
really
small.
Yes, right here. If the camera can see it.
Yeah.
Just right here.
So what you want to do is after the roots grow, this is a bit too small, but if you want it to grow well, you can actually just cut it off and then you can propagate it in a pot, right? But you may want to wait a little longer so that you have higher chance of it surviving.
So that means the right way is we have to wait for the right maturity. More established, more roots.
A little bit more roots will be good.
Right. Okay, then do you have another plant that is mature enough that we can start gifting and sharing?
Okay, on your right.
Oh my God. Oh, right here. And this is Anthurium, right?
That's right. Okay.
Different color
so
one.
this is a pink one, right? White, pink. All right. So do you want to try to propagate it?
I would love to.
You'd love to?
When you have the expert beside you, you just want to learn everything as a gardener. Okay, I'm all ready. What should I do?
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we try propagating it, all right? Why don't you try and take it out of the pot? So you'll want to sort of gently squeeze the pot to loosen the roots so that it's easy to take out from the pot.
Okay, so the roots, it's very important, right? We have to take
because
really
this
good
is
care of it.
Yeah, quite root bound, so it might take a bit of strength.
So I will slowly.
Yeah, slowly pull it out.
It's coming out.
Oh,
Look at the amount of roots.
yeah, that's great, right?
No, you see, I have transplanted, edibles and all. Usually the roots are very fine and I can actually brush it with a fork and slowly plant it in again.
Yeah.
They will survive. But if I look at this, the roots are all like entangled and all. If I were to
pull it apart.
Why murder the plant?
So this plant has quite a good and established and mature root system. Definitely when you break it apart, some of the roots will break. And the plant may be shocked a little bit, but this plant should be able to survive and be able to thrive after that.
So with your guidance,
maybe you can do it over here and then just try to pull it apart if you have enough strength.
so I try to, should I still loosen the soil a little?
I think it's okay. You
it's
can
okay,
try to.
Okay, I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have enough
Oh
strength?
yes, I can hear.
You'll start to, yeah,
Oh wow, takes a bit of strength.
It does take a little bit of strength. It's okay. Take your time.
Oh, I hear snapping sound. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Some of the roots will.
Oh my! I'm not murdering it, am I?
No, you're not.
Okay, it's good.
Okay, if
Let's
you-
grow well. Okay, you can do
Very
it.
nice. Very nicely done.
Is this okay?
Wonderful. Yes.
Okay, so I can have this potted.
Right. So now just now we had one plant. Now we have
Two.
two.
Yes.
Wonderful. So you could give this to your friend.
Yes.
Okay.
And we just have to.
You could just pot this, right? Okay. So we'll just put a bit of soil at the bottom here.
Okay, and put it in. Then I will put it with more soil.
Yes, you could just put more soil. Add on more.
Then after that, what should I do? Should I put a lot of water?
Yes, we should definitely water it after that. Okay, to let the soil settle into all the air gaps. Okay, and then for the next few days, you'll want to keep it well hydrated. And if you're not sure whether or not to water it, then do the touch test.
You know, a lot of us, being like new gardeners and all, they'll be thinking that, should I put fertilizer at this stage? I give it a bit more boost so that it can grow well, now that it's separated.
You may want to wait until the roots are established.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe in a couple of weeks' time when the roots are more established, then you can fertilize it.
Okay, so Shifu,
Yeah, good job.
how is my divided plant?
I think you did a really, really good job and on the spot.
I'm proud of myself too.
Thank you, Charlene.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for getting your hands dirty with us.
Oh, I love to because, I get to learn new ways and through this we can have more plants from the plants that we care well for. Now, okay, then these plants, how do I tell that it's going to grow well? Is that a sign?
So do keep a lookout if the plant starts to wilt and you'll want to look out for new growth. So when you see new growth, then you know that your plant roots are establishing and that the plant is able to take well to the conditions that they're in. Yeah.
Right. And we always say that growth is always a good sign. Like the saying, you grow where you are planted, right? Now, I hope that this propagated plant will be growing well. And Suen, thank you so much. I have learned new things from you and I trust that our audience too. Now, next, Suen will be sharing with us more about the orchid competition that has taken place at the National Orchid Garden. Also, her colleague Zaki will be coming on to join us and to share with us another highlight of our Singapore Garden Festival Hort Show 2021, the Horticultural competition. Now, viewers out there, we have a Q&A session right after their sharing, so please keep the questions coming in. Now, before that, let's take a look at a video about building a paludarium.
Hi everyone, I'm Taufik. Today we'll be talking about paludariums. There's one right here at the Forest Discovery Centre at OCBC Arboretum. You'll be wondering, what's a paludarium?
Paludariums are a cross between aquariums and terrariums. They combine both land and water elements to create different wildlife habitats and ecosystems.
Interested to build your own paludariums at home? Let's meet someone who can tell us more.
Hi Logan, could you show us how to make a simple paludarium at home?
Sure. First, you need to have a suitable tank for your home display. Next, prepare materials like aquarium soil, sand, cotton wool, plastic crates, stones, and driftwood. You will also need scissors, tweezers, and super glue. If you do not have super glue, you may use sewing thread.
You'll also need the following items for the paludarium to do well. The lamp will provide the plants with the optimal amount of 6 to 8 hours of light daily. In nature, water is filtered through many layers of soil, sand, rock, and other natural materials. A small water pump is needed to mimic this natural filtration of water. This particular paludarium will have two main zones, land and water.
For our plant selection, we will use a combination of aquatic and terrestrial plants. We can start preparing the respective land and water zones. You should also pre-soak the driftwood so that smaller or lighter pieces do not float around when water is added. Use dividers like plastic crates and rocks to create different levels of elevation. This ensures the water zone has enough depth for the aquatic plants and for the filter system to operate. Cotton wool can be used to plug any gaps. After setting the zones, identify the possible areas to place the filter system.
Now that we have all this in place, what's next?
Now it's time to pour in the substrate. You have your aquarium soil and sand.
For the terrestrial plants, it is important to retain the root ball. For the more fragile aquatic plants, we recommend using super glue. Once anchored, it is time to plant them into the substrate. Using a pair of tweezers, plant them in gently. Pour additional substrates to cover the plant's roots and keep them upright. To minimize splash damage on your hardwork, lay a piece of plastic over the hardscape. Gently pour the water into the tank to the desired depth. Start the filter and pump systems. Place the light source in.
Maintaining the paludarium is easy. Pop out water periodically to maintain the intended water level. Carefully trim overgrown and dead leaves. We hope you have fun making your own paludarium.
Do share with us photos of your paludariums at our NParks social media accounts. See you next time!
Welcome back to Singapore Garden Festival Hot Show 2021 Facebook Live. I'm Charlene Lin, your host for this session. Early on, Sue-Ann shared with us about how some plants are admired for their flowers, while others for their leaves. She also shared with us tips on buying potted plants. Now, she's back with us right now.
Hi,
She's
Charlene.
going to share with us more about the competitions, that was held for the Singapore Garden Festival competition. Now, to tell you more about it, in this segment, these competitions is actually places the spotlight on plants' excellence and also community effort through plants competition. Now, there are many categories ranging from plants to orchids, bonsais, aquascaping, and edibles, and many more. So, Sue-Ann, early on you said that you work with the National Orchid Garden, right?
Yes.
Now, some of our viewers may have just tuned in to us. So can you please kindly share with us, your very interesting job?
All right, for those of you who just joined us, I'm from the National Orchid Garden, and that's where we cultivate orchids for things like orchid namings, right, where we use orchid hybrids and name them after foreign dignitaries. We also cultivate very special orchid species as part of our orchid conservation program.
You know what, I can't say enough about how fun your job is, at the same time how important it is. Right, and today you're going to tell us about the orchid competition. Can you tell us more about it? What is it about and who can participate?
All right, well, the orchid competition, it's organized by the National Parks Board, the Singapore Botanic Gardens, as well as the Orchid Society of Southeast Asia. Now, this competition is open to everyone from the public. All right, earlier this week, we had 2 rounds of registrations, right? We had registration from the commercial growers who usually grow orchids as part of their nursery.
Oh, so you mean that they are the professionals that grow for a living?
That's
orchids
right.
for a living?
They grow orchids for a living.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we also have those who don't really grow it for a living, but they grow it as a hobby. So we have hobbyists as well as amateur growers submitting their orchids as well.
Right, okay, very interesting. Then how do they register for this competition?
How do they register? Okay, well, they can register online and they just need to submit their plants. And then when their plants come into us, the first thing that we do is, of course, we do a health check. Right? Now, what is a health check, right?
Right, what is a health check?
So we check the plant for pests and disease. So some of the things we may look for are holes in the stems. Now, holes in the stems are usually a sign of insect borers because they like to bore holes, right, into the stems. We may also, sometimes we may smell the plant and before we know that there's a disease, right? Because something...
How do you smell it? Like, what smell? Can you describe the smell to us?
It kind of smells like rotten vegetables.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so rotten vegetables, and that's usually a sign of bacterial rot.
Okay.
You might also
Any
want
other ways to tell whether a plant is not doing very well is actually there's diseases.
diseases. Okay, so you know, like the powdery sort of netting on the leaves or on the parts, other parts of the plant, and that will tell you that there's fungal rot. Right?
Ah, okay. From the way it sounds, it seems that orchids is not very easy to take care, right?
No, they're
It seems
not.
like they can fall sick pretty easily.
They do, they do. So orchids are very susceptible to pests.
Right. So in order to grow orchid, you need a lot of, I would say, perseverance.
Yeah.
Right. And also, I see that you have brought along 3 pots here.
Yeah.
To show us today.
Yeah.
And they are actually our winning plants from this year's competition.
Right.
Can you tell us more about them?
Okay, so the 3 orchids that we have here, they all won first place in their classes. Okay, and I'll tell you a little bit more about, let's start with this beautiful pink one over here. So this is Papilionanda John Club. Okay, now it's usually, you can identify it by sort of pencil-shaped leaves, right? These are the semi-terete leaves, okay? And do you know why this orchid was awarded the first place?
Maybe before you describe to me how they are awarded, can you first tell me about how do you, is there like, you know, I understand that there's section and class, right?
Yeah.
So there are some taggings that you need to do for orchids.
Ah, that's
so
right.
There's a bit of, maybe a bit of technicalities, but can you do share with us so that we can understand better how they are contested?
How they are contested. All right, so we have 8 sections, right? And we also have about 71 classes of orchids. Right? And all of these orchids, they will be placed in their various classes, and the judges will come on the judging day, and then they have a very clear rubric of how to mark the orchids and how to judge them.
Right.
And that's, yeah.
Okay, so with that, then it's better idea of what you should do when you're growing it.
That's right, right. And some of the criteria, right, maybe just to share, are like, if you look at a bloom, you'll want to look at the color. Is the color bright? Is it vibrant? Sometimes there are also breakthrough colors, all right? Some orchids, when they create the hybrid, is the first color of its kind, okay? So that will be very special, and normally those will be awarded higher points. Okay, you also want to look at the overall presentation of the flowers. Are the flowers facing forward? All right, are they sort of like haphazardly spraying all over the place? Okay, sometimes people also look, if you look at the rarity of the plant, right? Sometimes some plants are rare and they're very difficult to make them bloom, okay? We also do score that, right? Okay, and of course a rare plant which is blooming would score higher.
From what you have described, it seems that they are all presented right here in our winning plants.
Yeah,
right.
that's
so tell
right.
us more about it. So just now you mentioned about how the flowers are growing.
Yeah.
So I can see that like for this plant, the orchids are actually growing in a very nice direction. It's very pleasant to the eyes and they do not fight with each other for sunlight even.
Yeah, that's right. So this is what we call a good presentation of orchid flowers. And also we look at the floriferousness. So if you look at this, there are many, many blooms, okay? And each inflorescence has many flowers, okay? And so this would be sort of like considered a good bloom, okay? And it's actually quite difficult to get so many inflorescences, okay? Like for example, some of them even have 3 inflorescences on one plant.
Ah, right. Okay. Then what about the next plant?
All right, the next one. Okay, this is Vanda lombocensis. Now this is a species, right? And of course, we know species, which are usually more difficult to make them flower, right? And of course, unlike the John Club, which is a hybrid, right? Species, they require more specific conditions and they flower less often in a year. So Lombrokensis may flower once a year or maybe once every 2 years. Now, if you can smell that fragrance, it's actually coming from the Lombrokensis.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that it's commonly described for orchid, they have this pure and quiet scent. And if you are someone who appreciates orchid, you will actually put it in your house because of the subtle fragrance that you can get.
Yeah, definitely. So this is very subtle. It's not very in your face. And the Lombrokensis has a little bit of a spice scent. A little bit of a spice scent.
And it has a very unique spot on it.
Yeah.
Right, it looks like as though it's camouflaging.
Camouflaging. So this is one of the characteristics of species, right? Species are normally less showy in terms of their colors. So they have muted colors, which are sort of look a little bit like what you mentioned, camouflage, right? Camouflage.
Right, okay, and then over here, another orchid that is very special. It comes with 2 ribbons.
2 ribbons.
Yes, why
you
2
notice
ribbons?
that?
Yes.
So
a red and a blue ribbon.
So if you look at the other ones, they all have blue ribbons. So blue ribbons mean that they got first in class, right? First in class. Now, if you see a red ribbon, means they got best in section as well. So this one got best oncidium. Now, this orchid is particularly special because of the presentation of the flowers. Right, we can see that the flower blooms, they are quite close together, meaning that it's a compact bloom, okay? And they are all facing in a certain direction and they are presented well.
Right.
Okay.
And if you look at it, right, I feel that I'm looking at an art piece.
Yeah.
From the way it is, you can really feel like, it's art coming to life.
Yeah.
So beautifully placed. So the rest are all first in class. So is this. And at the same time, this is like first in school.
Yes.
For the cohort.
Yes, that's right. That's a really good description. First in cohort.
Right. Okay. Then could you share with us some tips, to aspiring orchid growers out there? Now, if they want to grow it, how to coax all these beautiful blooms out of their orchid? Because, these are seasonal plants. So they are at the mercy of the weather. How to do it?
All right, okay. For new beginners, I would recommend that firstly, you need to know what orchid you are having. Okay. Many different orchid types, they need different conditions. So if you put a full sun orchid in the shade, it's not going to do well, right? For example, this Papilionanda John Club next to me. Now, if you put it in the shade, it's never going to flower for you. Okay, so make sure that you know the conditions. Okay, get the lighting conditions right, your watering conditions right, and also now I'll talk a little bit more about fertilizing. So you'll want to use a balanced NPK during the non-competition period. That will make sure that the plant is robust, it's healthy and growing well, enough leaves and growing large enough to have the energy stores. So that just before competition period, maybe about 2 to 3 months, you'll want to start priming your plant. Now, to prime your plant, usually people start to pump the orchids or provide the orchids with higher potassium and higher phosphorus content in the fertilizer. Now, this usually triggers flowering in orchids.
Right. Thank you so much for your sharing. Now we know for aspiring orchid growers, here are the tips for you. So Xuan, can I let you take a short break for now before you join us again for the Q&A section?
Yeah, thanks Charlie.
Okay.
See you
Thank
later.
You. See you in a while. And now we're going to have Zaki, her colleague, who will be joining us. Now, Zaki, aside from being a very experienced horticulturist, he's also a very good photographer. Let's hear more from him. Hi, Zaki.
Hi, Charlene. Thank you so much.
Hi. Now, Zaki, can I please have you to introduce yourself to our viewers out there?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Zaki. I'm a horticulturist at Pasir Panjang Nursery. I specialize in palms. I propagate new and existing species, both native and exotic, to diversify our collection.
Right, and all thanks to your work, we are going to get a lot of different exotic species of these palms in Singapore.
That's right.
So now you're here to tell us more about the horticultural competition.
Okay.
Now, is it similar to the orchid competition?
Okay, the horticultural competition is organized by NParks. In some ways, it is similar to the orchid competition. Both professional and hobbyist growers can submit their plant entries to compete for various awards. And however, the types of plants that we feature for this competition are different. And because of that, the judging criteria and also types of award are also different.
Can you share with us more? What are the types of plants that can be competing? And also, how are they judged?
Okay, there are 9 categories of plants. Plant plant entries will be judged based on their overall form, health, and size. Firstly, we are looking for that your plants have to be healthy, blemish-free, and have a good overall form. We are also looking for plants that are rare, have attained an impressive size, also are difficult to cultivate. And they should also be all-round impressive with high decorative value, for example, in terms of variegation, symmetry, shape, and size.
So from the way it sounds, there are quite a lot of things that we have to look into in order to cultivate a winning plant. So I understand that you have brought some from the nursery to show us, right?
That's right, yeah. Okay, so let's start with this one. It's a Philodendron Birkin.
And what category is this in?
It falls under the aroid category. Yeah.
Okay.
So Philodendron Birkin, they are usually grown for its variegated leaves, which are really glossy. And most aroids, they produce inconspicuous flowers. So if your plants have flowers, there's more awards will be awarded.
Right, and you mentioned about variegation, right? So how do we tell? Could you give us an example? What do we look out for
to
say that this Birkin has good variegation?
Okay, so all these are constant, this consistent variegation over here, the white stuff, they are the variegation.
So we're not looking at the green lines, we're looking actually at the white area.
Yeah, the white areas. And some plants, they comes in yellow variegation.
Wow,
so
that
sometimes they are
actually
white.
makes them more beautiful.
That's right.
Ah, I see. Okay, so that's for aroid.
That's for
and
aroid.
the next one that you are going to show us?
Okay, the
what would
next
that
one
be?
is the fern. It's just behind you.
Okay, I'll bring you the fern.
Okay, ferns are non-flowering plant. They don't flower or fruit at all. They
Right.
produce spores, all this powdery brown substance under the leaves.
Yes.
Those are the spores. So they are not dead, they are not disease or there are any pests on them. Those are just the spores. And the spores, they are reproduced by spores.
So a good fern, to be judged, right, will be one that I would say is like, when you say asymmetrical form, it means it's quite bushy and it spreads out very nicely. Very
Symmetrical
evenly,
form, yes,
very
correct.
Evenly.
Very evenly.
Ah, that will stand a good chance.
That's a good chance.
Right, okay, so this is fern, and I
Okay,
know you have some
the next
begonia.
one is the begonia there.
Yes, very lovely color.
Nice colors, huh?
Yes.
Okay, begonias are shade-loving
Tell us more
plants.
about it.
Begonias are shade-loving plants. They are appreciated for the those very nice, nicely shaped leaves and also the gloss on it.
Yes.
For some begonias.
What is one characteristic of a begonia plant?
Okay, if you look closely over here,
Yes.
the leaves are asymmetrical, and that's one of the characteristics of a begonia. Most of them have asymmetrical leaves.
Right,
Yep.
okay.
All right.
And then aside from begonia,
Okay.
I know we have air plants, right?
Okay, air plants over here. This one is the Tillandsia ionenta. It is epiphytic, which means that it doesn't need soil to grow. In the wild, it sticks on the trunk and the branch of a tree. So the leaves absorb all the water and nutrients, and that's why it's called the air plant.
So it's very easy to take
It's
care
very easy to take care of this.
And it comes with many different types of
That's right,
varieties,
like the one over there.
Ah, beautiful.
Yep.
Right, and I know that there's one more category that's really, really popular. That's the edibles category,
The
right?
edibles, yes. Over here are the edibles. The edible plant categories have 5 classes, which are the mints, lettuces, kales, inner borages, and basil. You'll notice we only feature leafy edibles over here because there's another edible competition going on in Jurong Lake Gardens on the 21st and 22nd October, which features on fruiting vegetables like the tomatoes, cucumbers, and lady's fingers. They will be judged based on their rarity, weight, and size.
Right, okay. Now I have a question here. Now we talk about there's a category called the flowering plants category. Now there may be plants in other categories that are also flowering. So how do you determine what plants goes to which category?
Okay, so plants from the Hoya, hibiscus, and rose genus can be submitted into the flowering category. They must be flowering to be eligible. And Epicia sinningias and African violets are to compete under the Jasniras category. They should also be flowering to be eligible. And for the other categories, it is not necessary for the plants to be in flower, but additional points will be awarded for flowering specimens.
Right, and then the question is, for each category, is there only one plant that will be the winner?
Okay, there are up to 3 winning plants. And overall, there are also some special awards, and these are the Challenge Cup, awarded for the best entry out of all the champion plants from each of the 9 categories. Secondly is the Best Native Plant of Show, which will be awarded a ribbon and a medal. Thirdly is the Best Foliage Plant of Show, which also will be awarded a medal and a ribbon. And lastly is the Special Mention ribbon.
Right, thank you, Zaki. Thanks for
You're
sharing
welcome.
about the horticultural competition. Now, I'm sure now our viewers, you learn a bit more about what goes behind the scene of the Singapore Garden Festival plant competition. Now, I'd like to invite Xuan back with us to join us as we commence the Q&A session. Now, I'm going to leave the floor to the two of you. I will rejoin you later for the closing.
Thank you,
So,
Charlene.
questions, please keep them coming. The experts are here to support. Right, over to you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll be taking the first question, which is from, let's see, has it been sent? Okay, the first question was, should I clean my pots and do pots matter? Okay, so when you look at the orchid pots, right, it is important that you make sure that your orchids are, that your pot is clean. Now, when your pot is dirty, this could carry along pests and diseases, especially things like mealybugs, fungus, and bacteria. So you can give your give your pot a good clean with just some light soap, and that should remove most of any pests and diseases before you repot it. Now, when you purchase pots from nurseries and nurseries or like retail centers, when you bring it home, do give it a check, and you may want to give it a rinse as well just before you use it, because you never know what pests and diseases might be stuck to the pot.
Okay, I have a next question from Surya Nodin. Will submitting a common plant means I have less chance of winning? Not true. Your plants can be common, but they have to be they have to attain an impressive size, also healthy, and if it's under the flowering category, they should be flowering abundantly. Yep.
All right. Okay. So the next question which I have is from Michelle Teo, and she asks, should I pot my orchid in soil? Right. Now, as I mentioned before, there are many different types of orchids. Most orchids that we see are epiphytic, meaning that they like to grow on trees. Okay, epiphytic orchids usually do well if they are mounted on fern bark or on maybe a wooden stump, and they don't really like their soil, their roots to be covered in soil. All right, like just this one right next to me, which you can see. Now these have epiphytic roots. They like to be in air. They don't like to be covered in soil. But of course, there are other types of orchids as well, such as your bamboo orchid or Arundina graminefolia. There's also Spathoglottis. Now, these are known as terrestrial orchids. Terrestrial orchids, they like their roots to be in soil. They prefer moist conditions, and they don't like their roots to be exposed to the air, just like these. Okay, so you need to know what type of orchid that you've purchased. But I would say that most of the orchids that you buy in Singapore should be potted in charcoal, because most of the time you'll either be buying a vanda or a dendrobium. Yep.
Okay, the next question from Hafizuddin Ju. Do pots matter too? Do we need to clean or repot our plants before submitting? No, it's not. The main star is your plant, but it is good to make your plant look more presentable with a clean pot, because it will enhance the look of your overall plant. Yep.
All right. Okay, thank you. I'll be taking another question from Alicia Rain. So thank you for your question. And her question is, are there any size restrictions for competition submissions? So I can answer for orchid competition side, and then maybe Zaki can answer for plant competition.
Okay, sure.
Okay. As for plant size, no, there is no size restriction. You can submit miniature orchids. We've got a special section in class for them. You could also submit huge orchids, tiger orchids, which can even weigh up to a ton, and we will accept them as well, because we do have a class for those large specimens as well. Now, of course, the restriction would be if you you can't take a few plants and clump them together to make a super huge plant, right? So we won't be accepting those. But in general, we do accept any specimen plant which has naturally grown to a large size.
Okay, it goes the same for the hot show. It's the same. Also, there's no size restriction at all. You can submit the smallest plant, and also they can be rare sometimes. So really, it doesn't matter. Thank you. All right.
Okay, maybe I can take another question on what fertilizer is good for indoor plants, from Vic Tan. Okay, so there are lots of fertilizers in the market. There are also some slow release, some quick release. Now it really depends on the type that you buy and also the effect that you want. Now, if you don't like to fertilize your orchid or plant too often, you would want to use a slow release fertilizer. Okay, slow release fertilizers usually come in pellets, and they will release the nutrients slowly over a few months. Now, if you're indoors, you may want to avoid certain fertilizers such as chicken dung or manure type base, because this may attract insects and produce smells, which you may not want at indoors. But of course, if you're growing it along your corridor or in an outdoor open space, then it's okay what type you prefer to use. Do you have anything to add on fertilizers, Saki?
No, but for indoors, I would suggest water-soluble foliar feed on indoor plants, because they don't really smell.
Okay, my orchid, I choose the wrong. Let's take a question from Jessica Lee. She asked, my orchid leaves are turning yellow. What do I do? Okay, so there are many reasons why orchid leaves might turn yellow. Sometimes it could be due to lack of nutrients, and the plant may not be able to produce enough chlorophyll, which gives the leaves the green color. Okay, sometimes it could be due to burn, where the orchids become so hot and the leaves actually burn and they'll start to turn a sort of a yellowish brown. Okay, so actually there's a wide range of reasons why your orchid leaf is turning yellow. You may want to match the type of burn or the type of wilt and yellowing that you see to the correct disease or the correct burn and dehydration.
Okay, question from Jen Ho. How to make my desert rose flower and bloom? Okay, desert rose, it needs lots and lots of full sun to bloom, and then it needs at least 6 hours of sun to bloom, and it likes more to the dry side. It can't take really wet soil, so it has to be dry and get lots of full sun for your plants to bloom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got another question from Karen Na. Now she asks, hi Xuan, besides grow lights, can use fluorescent lights instead, okay? So I assume that she's growing orchids, right? Now, the difference between maybe if you buy a normal fluorescent tube is that it may not have the full spectrum of light, which is required for plants, right? Because plants have a specific spectrum of light, which usually can be found in grow lights. Okay, so I would recommend that if you do grow your plants indoors and you plan to use artificial light, do try to buy grow lights for plants, because then you'll be able to provide your plant with the correct spectrum of lights for growth. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Okay, there's a question from Jessica Chan. Do our edible plants need to be flowering in order to be eligible for competition? For leafy edibles, not necessary, but if your edibles are in flower, more points will be awarded to your plant. Thank you.
Okay.
you are looking through, I'm back with you on set. Right.
Hi, Charlene.
Right.
Hello.
Thank you so much for answering the question. Now, we have come to the end of today's Q&A session. Now, I hope that you have enjoyed today's session as much as I do. And please do check out more of our programs on the Singapore Garden Festival's website. Next week, our next Facebook Live will be on Sunday at 2 p.m. We have invited experts who's going to share with us more about mint and ginger. So we hope to see you then. Till then, have a great week ahead. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.